Hey everyone! In this video we're going to look at BADUSB and understand how the Flipper Zero can emulate a keyboard. So here's a script that does a SYSRQ. It is on a Unix system. It's going to immediately reboot the system without unmounting or syncing the file systems. The first time I tried this, I had disk corruption and it didn't run back into Kali. It took me to a command prompt to fix my drives. So use this command with caution. The next demo is a shutdown using SYSRQ lowercase o. And so we're going to go ahead and send that command. So there's our computer and now it's turned off and you can see the power's off on the laptop. This next demo, we use the vid, PID, manufacturer, and product of my DDJ400 controller, and it triggers the firmware update screen because the IDs of the hardware match. This next demonstration is using the extreme firmware. So we're using the BadKB, which is a Bluetooth or USB keyboard. So I've got Bluetooth and I've set it up for Bose speaker as the name of my Bluetooth connection. So over here on our computer, we'll go ahead and attach to a new Bluetooth device. Choose the Bose speakers. Hopefully don't notice that keyboard icon there. Say connect. And now the script's running on our device. So for the BADUSB, we just go into SD card, BADUSB, and drag your files here. The Flipper Zero BADUSB uses version 1 of the Ducky Script language. Let's look at each of the commands briefly. The first command is ID, which allows us to specify the USB vendor and product ID. This command does not work if you're using Bluetooth. You saw this can be used to trigger software, or it can be used to not trigger software in the case of like configuring a keyboard. The next command is rem, which allows us to put comments in our scripts. We can also temporarily remove code by putting rem in front of a command. Next, we have delay, which pauses for the number of milliseconds specified. On slower computers, this command is critical to make your scripts work properly. We have string and string-ln. These type in the text that follows. It uses the keyboard layout, so in some cases, this may not be exactly what you want. String-ln presses the enter key after it types the text. Alt-char uses Alt plus a numeric keypad to enter characters, so it takes the ASCII code of the character you'd like to enter, which avoids keyboard layout issues. Alt-code uses the Alt-char underneath to type in the text, so instead of typing in 065 for an A, you just say A or ABC to type ABC. Since it's using the ASCII codes, it will avoid keyboard layout issues. Repeat repeats the previous command the number of times specified, so you'll get an additional that many times a command. Default delay specifies the delay between commands, and string delay adds time between each character within the string it's typing. Hold followed by the button presses a button down and doesn't release it. On the next slide, we'll look at the various button names you can use. Release releases a button. Wait for button press shows a message on the Flipper Zero and pauses your script until a button on the Flipper Zero is pressed. And SYSRQ followed by a letter does the magic SYSRQ key. I'll put a link to a Wikipedia article that describes those, such as rebooting, killing processes, etc. Definitely use those commands with caution. Next, we have the names of all the keys that you can use. These can be used for both the hold and release or just as their own statement. If they're used as their own statement, some of these can have a letter that follows them, like control followed by a C to do a control C, or control followed by a V to do a paste. So control can be spelled out CTRL or the word control. However, Control Alt and Control Shift must be CTRL-Alt and CTRL-Shift. If you spell it out, it will not be recognized. GUI or Windows can be used. However, it must be GUI-Shift and GUI-Control. Alt and Alt-Shift. Again, the order matters, so it's not Shift-Alt, it's Alt-Shift. And then we have Shift, and then we have down, left, right, up, pause, escape, enter, caps lock. Caps lock followed by a delay, followed by caps lock, followed by a delay. We'll keep toggling the caps lock light, which could be useful in some scripts. In older firmwares, delete and backspace didn't do the right thing, but that looks to be fixed in all the firmwares I've tried. Home and insert numlock, page up, page down, print screen, scroll lock, space and tab. F1 through F12, so you can do your Alt F4, for example. And then menu or app is similar to a right click. So in things like Notepad, that menu can come in handy. Next, let's look at an example. So I'll bring up Notepad and we'll go ahead and maximize that window. So now we'll look at the keyboard shortcuts we need to manipulate this. So if we do Alt space, we bring up this context menu and we'll do R for restore. And so now it's no longer a maximized window. So now when I press Alt space, you'll see restore is disabled. So if we press R again, nothing will happen because R is disabled. So what if I go ahead and press R here, nothing happens. Now this time I'll do Alt space and then M to go ahead and do the move. So Alt space M. Now I'm using the down arrow. And I'm going to repeat that a bunch of times to move the window down so you can't see what I'm doing. Now I can go ahead and press enter. I can type in some text. And then when I'm done, I can do Alt space, M again, and then up arrow to move that window back into view. Another common thing you'll see in Windows is scripts that are executing PowerShell. So they'll use the GUI-R to pull up that run menu. They'll type in PowerShell along with the enter key. And then they're in PowerShell and they can do things like netsh to access the firewall or to access your wireless network credentials. They can use invoke web request to access the internet, start processes, invoke Notepad for showing messages. These are for Windows-centric environments, so you'll see that kind of thing. Finally, I want to go over some lessons that I learned. First of all, know your target environment. Know if it's Windows or Unix or Mac. The commands will differ. Even different versions of Windows have different commands. Test, test, test. Don't assume that Windows are in a certain state on a certain computer. Always try to get things back to working state that you understand. For example, we saw we could restore a window down from maximized, and if we restore it again, it stays restored. Use delays. Don't be afraid to add delays, especially if you're doing things like the GUI-R button. Take a little bit of delay before you start typing, because some computers are slower than others. For debugging, put a wait for button press somewhere down in your script where you want to see if everything's run up until then and see that the script has gotten to the state that you expect. Make sure you're using GUI-SHIFT and CTRL-Alt and Alt-Shift, and that you're doing those in the correct order. Repeat followed by the count is how many more times you want to do something, so watch out for those off by 1 errors. If you say repeat 10, you mean do it the first time and then repeat it 10 more times. Menu or app can sometimes get you into features that aren't typically bound to a keyboard, so make sure you look at that. But remember, again, it is very dependent on the environment you're running. And finally, the current firmware doesn't have the ability to store things back locally on your flipper. So you're going to want to push things back on the internet if you have those kind of options. Please leave a comment below with a link to one of the helpful scripts that you've found for using on the Flipper Zero. There's a ton of resources out there, so definitely want to share those with everybody. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe.